Ever wondered how to make the best beef stew ever? Well, you're in for a treat. We're going to unravel a fantastic recipe that's as simple as it is delicious. Imagine a pot brimming with tender chunks of beef, hearty vegetables, and a rich, flavoursome broth. This isn't just any beef stew, it's the beef stew that will have everyone at your table asking for seconds. Sounds tempting, doesn't it? Join us today as we delve into the step-by-step guide on creating the best beef stew ever. First things first, gather all the ingredients. A hearty beef stew calls for quality ingredients. Start with a boneless chuck roast, about 2 pounds. It's the best cut for a stew as it becomes tender and flavorful after long, slow cooking. Next, the vegetables. We'll need 2 medium-sized carrots, peeled and cut into bite-sized pieces, 2 stalks of celery, also chopped into bite-sized pieces, and 1 large yellow onion, diced. For the herbs, we'll need 2 bay leaves and a handful of fresh thyme. The bay leaves add a subtle bitterness that contrasts the sweetness of the vegetables, while the thyme adds a slightly minty yet earthy flavor. We'll also need some pantry staples. 3 cloves of garlic, minced, 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, and a cup of red wine for that rich, deep flavor. Don't forget the salt and pepper to taste. Now that we've got everything, it's time for the fun to begin. The star of our show is the beef, and it needs special attention. First things first, let's talk about the cleaning process. It's a given, but it's worth mentioning again. Always start with clean hands and a clean workspace. The beef itself doesn't need much cleaning. A quick rinse under cold water will do the trick. It's important not to overdo it, as we don't want to wash away the beef's natural flavors. After cleaning, we move on to the cutting. A good beef stew thrives on the right cut of meat. We're going for bite-sized pieces here, about 1 inch to 1.5 inches in size. Remember, we're not just cutting for aesthetics, but for taste as well. Smaller pieces mean more surface area for our marinade to work its magic and for the heat to evenly penetrate the meat during cooking. Now, on to the marinating. This is where we infuse our beef with flavor. A simple marinade of salt, pepper, and a touch of olive oil will suffice. The salt brings out the meat's inherent umami, while the pepper adds a slight kick. The olive oil, on the other hand, helps to tenderize the beef, breaking down the tough muscle fibers. Make sure each piece of beef is thoroughly coated in the marinade. You'll want to let the beef sit in the marinade for at least an hour. Overnight is even better. The longer the beef marinates, the more flavor it will absorb. Each of these steps, while simple, are crucial to the final taste of our stew. It's the attention to detail that elevates a good beef stew to a great one. Cleaning ensures we're starting with a pure, unadulterated beef flavor. Cutting not only determines the texture of our stew, but also how well the beef absorbs the marinade. And the marinating itself is where we begin to build layers of flavor that will permeate our stew. With our beef well prepared, we can now move on to our veggies. Our vegetables not only add color, but a burst of flavors too. Let's roll up our sleeves and dive into the world of greens and golds. We start with the root of all good stews, the humble onion. When finely chopped and sautéed, it lends a sweet, caramel-like undertone that binds all the other flavors together. Next, we have carrots. Their vibrant orange adds a visual pop to our stew, but it's their sweet, earthy flavor that really steals the show. A rough chop into chunky pieces is all it takes. Then comes the celery. This unsung hero adds a subtle savory note and a pleasant crunch. Slice it thin to ensure it cooks evenly. And let's not forget about our lovely potatoes. These starchy wonders will break down a bit during cooking, helping to thicken the stew and giving it body. Dice them into 1-inch cubes for the best texture. Last but not least, we have garlic. Mince it finely to release its potent aromatic oils. A little goes a long way, so use it sparingly. Now, why these particular vegetables, you ask? They each bring their own unique flavor profiles to the table, creating a harmonious symphony of taste in every spoonful of our stew. The sweet, the savory, the earthy, and the aromatic, all dancing together in perfect harmony. Now that our prep work is done, it's time to bring everything together. This is where the magic happens. It's time to cook our stew. So, we've prepped our beef and our vegetables, and now we're ready to bring it all together. The first step is to heat your pot over medium heat. Once it's hot, add a dollop of butter, let it melt, and then toss in our beautifully browned beef. Hear that sizzle? That's the sound of flavor being born. Give the beef a good stir, allowing it to mingle with the butter. Next, it's time for our aromatic veggies. Toss in the onions, carrots and garlic, stirring everything together. The vegetables will start to soften and their flavors will meld with the beef, creating a symphony of taste in your pot. Now, let's introduce some liquid. Pour in the beef broth, followed by a generous glug of red wine. The wine will add depth and richness to our stew, while also helping to tenderize the beef even further. Don't worry, the alcohol will cook out, leaving only the delicious taste behind. Once the liquid is in, add the potatoes and the herbs. Give everything a good stir, making sure all the ingredients are well mixed. Then it's time to let time do its work. Lower the heat to a simmer, put the lid on your pot and let your stew cook for at least 2 hours. Why so long, you may wonder? Well, slow cooking is the secret to a flavorful, tender beef stew. It allows the flavors to deepen and the beef to become melt-in-your-mouth tender. Resist the temptation to rush this step. Good things, as they say, come to those who wait. After 2 hours, check your stew. The beef should be tender, the vegetables soft, and the broth rich and flavorful. If it's not quite there yet, give it a little more time. Patience is key here. And there you have it, a pot full of goodness, but we're not done yet. The final touches are coming up next, where we'll transform this already delicious stew into something truly extraordinary, so stay tuned. The best way to enjoy beef stew is to pair it with complementary dishes and beverages. Now, let's talk about some of those options. First, consider pairing your beef stew with a hearty, crusty bread. It's perfect for soaking up all those delectable juices and flavors. A fresh baguette or a loaf of sourdough bread would be an excellent choice. If you're in the mood for something a bit lighter, a side salad is a splendid option. A simple green salad with a tangy vinaigrette can balance the richness of the stew, providing a refreshing contrast. As for beverages, a full-bodied red wine such as a Cabernet Sauvignon or a Merlot is a classic choice that pairs beautifully with the robust flavors of the beef stew. If you're not a wine drinker, a dark stout beer or even a non-alcoholic apple cider can be equally delightful. Now, let's take a moment to recap the steps we've taken today. We began by gathering our ingredients, focusing on high-quality, fresh produce and cuts of beef. We then prepared our beef, ensuring it was properly seasoned and browned to lock in those flavors. Next, we moved on to our vegetables, chopping them into bite-sized pieces and sautéing them to bring out their natural sweetness. Finally, we combined everything in a pot, added our liquids and let it all simmer until it reached a state of perfect, mouth-watering tenderness. Remember, cooking is as much about the journey as it is about the destination. It's about taking your time, enjoying the process, and savoring the aromas and tastes along the way. And most importantly, it's about sharing the fruits of your labor with the people you care about. And that, my friends, is how you make the best beef stew ever. Give it a try and let us know what you think. Until next time, happy cooking.